Frank Caprio walked into law school. He did not walk in with the confidence of someone destined for greatness. He walked in with the humility of a young man who knew exactly where he came from. Fruit-cart, hard-working immigrant family, and neighborhood where survival required grit and generosity in equal measure. He was older than some of his classmates. He carried exhaustion from working night. He carried the weight of responsibility, not just for himself, but for his parent, who had sacrificed everything so he could stand here. But he also carried something few carried at that age, an unshakable sense of purpose. Frank was not studying law for prestige. He was not studying to become a corporate attorney or to join a high-rise firm with glass walls and leather chairs. He was studying law because he wanted to understand the world that so often crashed the vulnerable and find a way to soften its pals. Law school was grueling, case books taller than his four arms, professors who dissected arguments like surgeons, classrooms where the quickest voice often drowned out quiet brilliance. Frank didn't dominate discussions. He didn't speak to impress. But when he did speak, the room fell silent because he spoke with purpose, with clarity, with humanity. He once told a professor during a debate, law should protect the people, not intimidate them. Professor paused, looked at him over his glasses and smiled. Mr. Caprio, you were in the right place. When Frank finally graduated and passed the bar, he did not chase wealth. He opened a small office, barely more than a room, with a desk that warmed and chairs donated by neighbors who believed in him. His first client were workers, immigrants, single mothers, and elderly residents, confused by paperwork written in a language they could not understand. They came to him with problems with large firms would never touch, or that large firms would never touch. An unfair eviction, a paycheck stolen by an employer, a parking ticket they could not afford, a landlord who ignored repairs, misunderstanding as Harold interfered. Frank listened to all of them patiently, quietly, fully. He didn't see clients, he saw people who needed someone in their corner, someone who didn't see them as burdens or sources of income, someone who believed they deserved justice, even if they couldn't pay for it. Sometimes, when a struggling client opened their empty wallet, apologizing, Frank would place a hand on theirs and say, "Pay me when you can today. Let's just solve your problem." Word spread. The poor trusted him. The lost found comfort in him. The immigrants saw in him the reflection of their own struggles. And slowly, the neighborhood began to view him, not just as a lawyer, but as a protector. One cold winter evening, Frank left his tiny law office to find an elderly woman waiting outside, shivering in the wind. Her hands trembled as she explained that her landlord was trying to evict her despite her paying rent faithfully for 24 years. Frank brought her inside, made her tea and listened. By the next morning, he was standing in front of a judge, defending her with a fire rarely seen in young advocates. He argued not only the fact, but the humanity of her situation. He won. When the elderly woman hacked him right into his shoulder, Frank realized something profound. Helping people gave him a fulfillment deeper than any paycheck ever could. He walked home that night, not feeling like a young lawyer, felt like a man who had begun to find his calling. But destiny, as always, had more in store. Frank's reputation grew, not through advertising or ambition, but through whispered stories shared over fences, in grocery lines, in barber shops, and in church pews. If you are in trouble, go see Caprio. He won't judge you. He treats you like family. But man listens with his heart. Eventually, community leaders noticed. City officials noticed. Even judges noticed. And one day, a phone call came that would change the trajectory of his entire life. Mr. Caprio, would you consider serving as a municipal court judge? Frank froze. Him? A judge? He thought of his father's fruit cart, of sweeping restaurant floors, of saving pennies for tuition. He thought of the people who had believed in him when he was just a boy, with calloused hands and quiet dreams. He accepted the appointment, but promised himself one thing. If he ever wore the judge robe, he would wear it with the heart of the boy from Thither Hill, not the ego of a man who forgot where he came from. He didn't know it yet, but his courtroom would soon become one of the most beloved in the world. And his voice, gentle, warm, endlessly patient, would soothe millions. But first, he needed to step into the courtroom that would reveal to him who it really was. The municipal court of Providence was not grand. Its walls were plain, its benches were worn, its lighting hammed with the quiet fatigue of public buildings that had seen decades of faces pass through. It wasn't a courtroom where high-profile cases unfolded. It wasn't a place where history books were written. Here, justice concerned itself with the everyday: parking tickets, speeding violations, broken headlight, expired registrations. Cases most judges dismissed as trivial. But Frank Caprio saw something different when he stepped through those wooden doors for the first time. He saw people whose lives were shaped by these small moments, people who walked into court with fear in their eyes, shame in their posture, or frustration in their voices. He saw the single mother juggling 2 jobs. He saw the elderly man struggling to understand paperwork. He saw the immigrant who feared the system because the system had never been kind to him. He saw the young father trying to do his best. He saw the homeless man who didn't know where he would sleep that night. He saw what the law books did not: human stories, human struggles, human heart. His first case was a man in his 50s who looked as though life had folded him in half. His shoulders curved inward, his coat torn at the sleeves, his hair unwashed. He was charged with multiple parking violations. As he stood trembling before the bench, Frank said gently, "Sir, what brought you here today?" The man hesitated, tears welling. I wasn't living in my car," he whispered, "but sometimes I sleep there." The courtroom still. Even the air seemed to pause. Other judges might have cut him off, might have dismissed the explanation, might have handed down a fine the man could never pay. But Frank leaned forward, eyes soft. "Talk to me," he said. The man explained that he had lost his job, then his home. He had nowhere else to go. The parking ticket had piled up because he was simply trying not to freeze to death. Frank exhaled slowly. He didn't consult the law book. He didn't hide behind procedure. He spoke from the place his father had planted long ago. the place where kindness takes root. I'm going to dismiss all your fines, Frank said, but I want you to promise me something. The man nodded, tears falling. When life gets better, Frank continued, and I know it will, we'll pay this kindness forward. The man sobbed, the courtroom sobbed. Even the bailiff blinked back tears. That day, for the first time, Frank saw clearly what his role truly was. Not to judge, not to punish, but to uplift. To remind people that even when life concerned them, compassion could open a door. As the days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months, Frank's courtroom transformed into something rare. A place where justice did not feel cold or mechanical, but human, warm, and sincere. A mother appeared with her young son, charged with speeding through a school zone. Frank looked at the boy. "What do you think?" he asked him playfully. "Should Mom get a break, or should she pay?" The boy looked at his mother, then at Frank, then whispered, "Give her a break, she works hard." Laughter filled the room. Frank smiled. Case dismissed. Single act of mercy became a moment of connection, memory the boy would carry for life. There were times when Frank had to enforce penalties, times when responsibility mattered, times when consequences were necessary, but even then his tone never changed. He never humiliated, never scolded harshly, never forgot the fragility of the human spirit. He understood something profound. Most people aren't bad, they're just trying to survive. And surviving is messy. It involves mistakes. It involves a moment of weakness. It involves doing the wrong thing for the right reason. Frank saw himself in these people. He saw his father's customers struggling to make ends meet. He saw his mother's quiet sacrifices. He saw his neighbors on Federal Hill. He saw his childhood, his heritage, his community, and he judged with the heart of a man who had lived among them. One afternoon, a local cameraman approached him. "Judge Caprio," he said, "would you allow us to record a few sessions for a community show? Just a small project. Hardly anyone will see it." Frank hesitated. He didn't care for attention, but he cared about transparency. "All right," he said, "as long as people are treated with respect." Thus began Caught in Providence, a simple idea that would become a global phenomenon. But no one knew it yet, especially not the man at the center of it, the judge who still carried the fruit peddler's lessons in his chest. The camera was not there to film punishment. It was there to film humanity, and that, more than anything, was what Frank Caprio had to offer. His decisions didn't just settle fights. They healed heart. They restored dignity. They reminded people that justice could smile. And as the recordings began to spread quietly through Rhode Island, the world was unknowingly preparing for the day when a soft-spoken judge from a small city would bring hope to millions. The story of how that happened belongs to the next chapter. For years, Caught in Providence aired quietly on local television. A simple community access show watched mostly by retirees, insomniacs, and people folding laundry on weekday afternoons. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't marketed. It wasn't expected to go anywhere. But something strange began to happen. People who watched the show didn't just enjoy it, they felt changed by it. Grandmother in Providence called her daughter in Boston. "You have to see this judge. He reminds me of your grandfather." A college student shared a clip with a friend. "This is the first time I've seen justice with a heart." A young mother posted a video on her Facebook page. "I cried watching this. I don't even know why." Slowly, the quiet ripples began to grow. A TV producer in New York saw a clip and said, "Who is this man?" A web editor in Los Angeles uploaded a small moment, a case where a single father broke down and Judge Caprio forgave him with a hand on his shoulder and a voice full of understanding. That clip was 2 minutes long, and it went everywhere. It traveled faster than anyone could trace. It leapfrogged across social media. It appeared in group chats, blogs, morning shows, emails from mothers to sons, from teachers to students, from workers to their co-workers during lunch breaks. The world had discovered something it didn't know it was craving: human kindness, not staged, not acting, not politics, not performance, but real, authentic, unfiltered kindness. A clip of Judge Caprio forgiving a struggling immigrant, 2 million views. A clip of him letting a child decide a parent's fine, 5 million views. A clip of him telling a homeless veteran, "You deserve this, now let us serve you," 10 million views. A clip of him crying with a grieving mother, 20 million views. Sadly, the court's phone lines flooded with calls. "I want to thank the judge. Does he take letters? Can I watch a session? Is he real?" Frank was bewildered. He walked into the courthouse one morning and found a line of people outside. Tourists, fans, reporters, families, just waiting to sit in the courtroom where compassion lived. Judge Caprio, can we take a picture? I watch you in Brazil. You helped me through a hard time. My children love you. You made me believe in kindness again." Frank looked out at them, stunned. Never in his life had he imagined that the small courtroom where he dismissed parking ticket and listened to everyday struggles would become a global sanctuary. He stood at the entrance, robe wrapped over one arm, and whispered to the clerk beside him, "I don't understand it. I'm just doing my job." But the clerk, smiling gently, answered, "No, Judge, you're doing much more than that." Meanwhile, in living rooms across the world, families gathered around screens to watch clips of him. They didn't just watch for the rulings, they watched for the warmth, the humor, the humanity. He teased teenagers the way a loving grandfather would. He encouraged exhausted mothers with soft words. He thanked veterans with tears in his eyes. He forgave seniors who came in trembling with fear. And every time he made the decision, he explained it, not in legal jargon, but in words that he would say things like, "I don't see a defendant, I see a human being. We all make mistakes. What matters is how we move forward. You're not alone. You did the best you could. Life is tough, but so are you." People around the world shared these clips not because they were shocking, but because they reminded them of something they had forgotten. Justice can be gentle, authority can be humane, power can be compassionate. Television networks took notice, producers called, interview requests poured in, morning shows invited him. He became a guest on international programs. Judge Caprio restores faith in humanity. Headlines proclaim, "He's the judge with a heart." Others said, "The kindest man on the internet," blogs declared. Frank remained humble. He didn't buy a fancy suit. He didn't move to a bigger house. He didn't hire publicists. Every morning, he still walked into the courthouse with a thermos of coffee and the quiet dignity of a man who remembered exactly who he was. A fruit peddler's son, a teacher, a listener, a man raised to believe that every person deserves to be treated with respect. When asked about his faith, he would shrug gently and say, "I just try to do the right thing. The rest, that's God's work." But the world's love for him wasn't because of one viral clip. It was because in a society exhausted by noise, division, and anger, Judge Caprio offered something rare: a calm, compassionate voice, a moment of humanity, a reminder that kindness still exists.